And I didn't, my crystal ball wasn't working that day. We had 24 candidates, so I thought, I think let's just endorse the person who would be the very best president. And I had three reasons, three characteristics: brains, story, and character. And brains, I mean, we got a lot of smart candidates, but only one speaks 6 languages, was a Rhodes Scholar, plays the classical piano, loves James Joyce, and is just incredibly articulate. And every time I see Pete speak, for example, last night in Nevada, he is astonishingly articulate and poignant and right to the point, and he's going to crush Donald Trump in these debates. And then there's story, because that's the only way we learn. This is a guy who didn't want to be a chicken hawk leader, so he enlisted in the Navy and served with distinction in Afghanistan. Here's a man who didn't figure out his sexuality till he was 30, and now he's one half of one of the proudest gay couples in America. And this was a young man who took a dying Middle West city and created it into a millennial heaven, taking time along the way to rush to the hospital to speak Arabic or to marry a couple that wandered into his office. But most importantly, and let me speak about experience too. You know, the nice part about being a mayor is got this incredible accountability. Every pothole, every school redistricting, every land use decision, every bike lane gets noticed and criticized and commented upon. And instead of supervising 20 or 30 people, he supervised 1,000 in South Bend. But most importantly, I care about character. Pete is unflappable, warm, calm, kind, wholly comfortable in his own skin, funny and wise. He brings the gravitas and discipline of Barack Obama to this office. And at a time when this nation is as divided as any of us can ever remember, it desperately
needs a healer. And Pete has the maturity, the wisdom to bring this country back together again. Thank you so much for being here today. This is, gosh, the largest political event of my year. So. To get you really fired up, let me introduce Kyle Rumpler, who is a volunteer on the Pete for Virginia campaign, has been working hard for Pete all year. Kyle?
And Mr. Better heard it all.
Thank you, Congressman Meyer.
I hope your dad's on that.
So the first time I heard Pete's name, and I think a lot of you probably had a similar experience, it was the CNN Town Hall in March 2019, and they were doing 4 in that same night, all household names except Pete, and I just said, okay, I've watched the other 3, I might as well give this last guy a chance. And boy, that moment, that town hall just changed everything. Seeing a politician answer questions in a straightforward way, and someone who was ready to prove that my generation was able to step up, and not to mention the emotions involved with seeing a gay man be considered a serious candidate for the President of the United States. Let's just say I got hooked. The next day I make a Twitter account, it's okay. Like many volunteers on this campaign across the country, before Pete, I had never done anything political. Never any volunteering, contributed, but had just never been involved. But I'm so thankful to be part of this team and to say that I've been here since March of last year, and just to be part of this community, one that's been built up by Pete and this campaign, one that's kind, intelligent, thoughtful, passionate, accepting, all things that we have seen and learned directly from Pete over the course of this past year. No matter what event or who is in attendance, Pete's values have never wavered. And that's why the phrase, "be like Pete," really means something to our volunteers and to the people who support this campaign. It instills a sense of duty to make ourselves useful and to solve problems. And I cannot emphasize enough how the Virginia for Pete team has brought this to fruition and lived this in their lives. From helping out at the Capital Area Food Bank and Habitat for Humanity, to cleaning up roadsides all over the state and participating in Wreaths Across America, you all have really answered Pete's national call to service right here in Virginia. Pete is so fortunate, and we as a team are so fortunate to have thousands of engaged volunteers statewide, including people in every single congressional district. You all, right here in this crowd, you marched in Roanoke's Labor Day celebration. You dressed in your best blue ties and brown shoes to look like Pete in the Vienna Halloween Parade. You cheered on runners at the Marine Corps Marathon, attended Pride festivals, football tailgates, and so much more, just in the name of Pete. You canvassed in Alexandria, in Harrisonburg, in Chesapeake, Crozet, Fredericksburg, Manassas, Richmond, Blacksburg, Norfolk, Annandale, Midlothian, Onley, Vinton. The list goes on and on. Anywhere there was someone willing to listen, you all were ready to talk about Pete. Too many things to say. Possibly our biggest accomplishment, you helped us collect over 12,300 signatures across the state just so that the son of a Maltese immigrant could be on the primary ballot. And this is the ballot that you all are going to see in just 9 days when Virginia votes on Super Tuesday. Along the way, there's no doubt that we came across skepticism, and there was a lot of hesitant approval. I know we've all heard this said. I like Pete, but I just don't know if America is ready. Well, Virginia. Well, 3 states have now voted, and I can tell you with 110% certainty, America is ready for Pete. You all and all the people still out in line around the block, you've all found your way here today because Pete inspires you for one reason or another. And we now have 9 days to harness that energy and deliver Pete the win in Virginia. So as we get ready to vote on Super Tuesday, join the Virginia for Pete team. Make calls, send texts, knock on doors, put up yard signs. Come canvass with us for any amount of time in any capacity that you can. Really, every single effort that you make is worth it and makes a difference right up until people cast their ballot. Pete's Mobilize.com platform, as well as the Virginia for Pete website, now has over 60 events planned in the next 9 days for you all to get involved all across the state. So find us on social media, get on our email list, and get involved. But right now, really quick, while you're all here, I want you to pull out your phones and text the word Pete to 25859. And I know you all are already on this text listserv, but just do it again. It will help connect all of you to Virginia for Pete and the other states that you're from to come see Pete here today. With your local grassroots efforts. So again, that's Pete, P-E-T-E, to 25859. And just remember, Pete's success in these early states, when he won in Iowa, was due to the hard work of organizers and volunteers like you. And we have that exact same energy here. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you all for everything you have done in Virginia. And let's go win the era.
Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Jessica Shorstein. I've been a volunteer with Virginia for Pete since June, after Pete's rally in Alexandria. There were around 600 people at that event, so just looking around, you can see see how far we've come since last summer. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, so I have very little free time, but the time that I do have, I give toward Virginia for Pete. He gave me hope about politics for the first time in a long time. I was inspired in the way I want to be inspired by the leader of our country. I believe that Pete's calm and patient demeanor, willingness to truly listen to people of all backgrounds and experiences, and ability to bring people together across the political spectrum represent the type of leader that we need and the type of person that I want my children to see and be inspired by. For the last 9 months, I've gotten to know people from all walks of life that I would not have come across but for our shared sense of hope for something better for our country. Pete has already begun to build the sense of community and belonging that I know he will accomplish as president.
Arlington Independent Media.
We'll be sharing more about how to get involved with our group, but I hope to see many of you out there as we work to win Virginia for Pete.
Hi. Thank you for coming. My name is Christy Kelly, and I'm the Virginia CD lead for Virginia's for Pete. And I guess I can tell you my story about me. Because I am an immigrant, and I'm a wife, and I'm a mother of 2 beautiful biracial children, both brilliant in their own way.
Yeah, well, they're going to come back over here and you're going to leave the camera, right? You said there was going to be nobody here, you just wanted the camera.
Right. I first heard of him last spring.
And just leave the camera there.
Right.
On all the Democratic podcasts, I consume like M&Ms, just like I'm sure everybody else, just to get some reassurance that things will be better. But I was still undecided.
They've got a press stand if they want.
And I kept listening, and I heard him listen back to the people and respond back in a very empathetic way. And the more I watched, I saw a man that talked about inclusion and belonging, but not just on the surface, mouthing what we are also used to hearing from politicians. I saw a husband, Chasten, actually talk about how schools and our government had to do better for children like mine, both of them. And I saw acceptance, and even more, the possibility that my children, both children, could find a place in this new American identity that Pete and Chasten talked about. I was more than impressed, and I brought with tears, and I felt seen for the first time. So I got off Twitter, mostly, and I volunteered for Pete over this summer, and I found an army of like-minded supporters just like me here in Virginia and across the country, ready to join me to make a greater us. Pete's message was empowered total novices in politics like myself, who has never done anything like this before. And we joined together, and we found power to change our lives and our politics, and we see it now. And we found it by joining and believing in Pete's message. And as I look out into this crowd, I believe I'm not alone in longing for better days, that turning the page and looking for the future can bring us all. And I hope you all join us. And now, I'd like to introduce you to our next president, Pete.
Make a guy from Indiana feel right at home. Thank you so much to our phenomenal supporters. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. This is what it feels like to build a new kind of presidency, and you are right in the middle of it. We are so thrilled to be here. I'll be honest, we're running on adrenaline. 24 hours ago, we were in Nevada. Last night, we were in Colorado. This morning, we were in church in South Carolina. And now I'm thrilled to join you right here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Where, as you know, just over a week from now is an opportunity to make history, an opportunity to change the course of this country, and so much depends on the choice that we are about to make. If you've ever seen me speak, you know how I like to begin, which is to invite everybody to form in your own mind, your own version of the image that guides this whole campaign. And that is how it's going to feel the first time that that sun comes up over the Potomac and Donald Trump is no longer the president of the United States. Feels good to think about it, right? Aren't you ready to put the chaos behind us? Won't it feel good to put the cruelty behind us? Who's ready to put the tweets behind us? It's going to be a good day. And we have a responsibility to make sure that day comes about sooner rather than later. The good news about being a voter in 2020 is we have that chance. If you watched what played out in Mitch McConnell's Senate during this impeachment trial, if you felt the frustration, if you felt the exhaustion, maybe even felt that terrible temptation to turn it all off and walk away, now is our chance to remember that they might have been the jury then, but the verdict is up to us now on this president and on those senators who protected him. Let's use that choice wisely. But that means that in a few short days, we could go one way or the other as a party. So much depends on getting this right. Now, I respect my friend Senator Sanders. I believe the ideals he talks about are ideals we all share. But I also believe that the way we will build the movement to defeat Donald Trump is to call people into our tent, not to call them names online. The vision of replacing this president is one that speaks to my fellow diehard Democrats, yes, but we are also calling out to the independents. And we are delighted to see some of the ranks of what I like to call future former Republicans signing up for this, and you are welcome to be at our side. We can do this together. We have to do this together. And you are welcome. But that means building a tent big enough to draw us in and harnessing, galvanizing, mobilizing, not polarizing the American majority ready to see that happen. We can solve the big challenges of our time, deliver health care to every American and give everybody the freedom to walk away from their health insurance companies toward a public plan. America will support that just so long as we give you the freedom to decide whether you want that public plan in the first place. That's how we build this majority. We're going to need a nominee ready to bring Americans together. And we're going to need a nominee who understands that we dare not treat the presidency like it is the only office that matters. Right here in Virginia, your legislature is demonstrating the power of doing the right thing at the state level when we get those offices into the right hands. So when voices from those frontline districts that are so critical to keeping the House in the right hands, when voices working on those Senate races we're going to need so badly in order to make sure that the judiciary is not permanently remade in the wrong direction. We had better make sure we got a nominee at the top of the ticket who can not just take back the White House, but keep the House in the right hands and send Mitch McConnell packing. We dare not ignore, we dare not dismiss, and we absolutely dare not attack those voices in the Democratic Party focusing on keeping those seats in the right hands, because the next president is going to need that in order to get any of our big, bold ideas done. Now, I also think it would help for us to have a nominee who can challenge this president and call him out. This president wants to talk about being there for the forgotten people, even though the only economic promise that he has kept is tax cuts for giant corporations. How about making sure he's held to account on a debate stage by a Democratic nominee who actually lives and worked in a middle-class neighborhood in the industrial Midwest in the heart of the so-called Rust Belt, and can talk about what it means to have an economy that actually works for us? Who likes to cloak himself in the language of religion. This president, right, sends out the likes of Rush Limbaugh to give instructions on family values. Wouldn't it be a good idea to have him held to account by a nominee prepared to insist that America belongs to people of every religion and of no religion equally? Wouldn't it be a good idea for our nominee to be prepared to call out to fellow believers with the message that God does not belong to a political party in the United States of America? And if this president keeps up that tough talk, keeps beating his chest and throwing himself military parades, maybe the time has come for a war veteran to stand next to him and educate him on how is not the act of a patriot. You are building the campaign that will defeat this president, and this is our one shot, so we've got to get it right. And the good news is, we have an American majority not only to defeat this president, not only agreeing on what it is that we're against, but an even bigger and more powerful majority insisting on what it is that we are for. That's the real reason I asked you to picture the sun coming up that day. It's not just that we got to bring that sunrise about. It's that on that day, the next president will face challenges the likes of which we barely thought of a few years ago. And we are going to need to harness the American majority determined to do something about it. The American people already understand that this is a country that must elevate wages, empower workers, and see to it that one job is enough, whether you got a college degree or not. There is an American majority right now prepared to act and insisting that there be no such thing as an uninsured American. And speaking of health care, the American people already understand that in order to truly have good health in this country, we got to take that same level of urgency, the same resources, and the same openness that we have for physical medical issues, and finally bring it to bear on substance use and mental health too. We got to bring that out of the shadows and do something about it. a powerful American majority that understands that part of how you honor our troops is not just to say so on a bumper sticker, but to give them a commander-in-chief who will bring an end to endless war and never allow them to be sent into a conflict that could have been prevented. Right now, we've got an American majority that understands that immigration is part of the lifeblood of this country, that supports dreamers and a pathway to citizenship, and will send the message to those caught in limbo that este país es tu país también. We have an American majority now ready to act so that this can become a country where your race has no bearing on your health or your wealth or on your experience with law enforcement in the United States of America. We must act now to make that a reality. Right now, an American majority stands ready to defend the next generation by backing up those who educate them with a Secretary of Education who believes in public education and supports our people. So you see, the American people are already there, and now we have to have the presidential leadership to get these things done. This is not something that can wait. We cannot wait 10 years. We cannot wait 4 years. Everywhere I go, I meet Americans who remind me what is on the line. Just by chance, because I was campaigning, I was in the airport, ran into somebody I had served with, hadn't seen since we were both in Afghanistan, hadn't seen since she was injured in an insider attack. And I saw her walking down the airport concourse wearing a t-shirt from the Wounded Warrior Project that said "Some assembly required." And when I asked her how she was doing, she lifted up her knee and tapped on her prosthetic leg, the part they couldn't save. She said, "The Navy fixed me up just fine," and she's looking forward to her next deployment. She can't wait for a commander-in-chief who actually understands the meaning of being sent into war by the decisions of a United States president. But the ones who really get my attention are the Americans I am meeting who are not yet even old enough to vote. We had an 11-year-old come to one of my events and raise his hand to ask about prescription drug affordability. I thought, this is pretty cool. This is a smart kid. He wasn't asking because he's an emerging healthcare policy buff. He was asking because he needs insulin and he's worried about whether he will continue to be able to get access to it. He can't wait for us to act to ensure that there is no such thing as an unaffordable prescription in the United States of America. When a 13-year-old came to one of my events and let me know that she had asked for a Kevlar bulletproof backpack for Christmas, I didn't even know there was such a thing. She can't wait, because this should not even be her problem. We should worry about this sort of thing so she doesn't have to. She can't wait for us to act so that the Second Amendment can no longer be twisted into an excuse to do nothing at all about gun violence in this country. And when a 10-year-old comes to one of my events and diplomatically points out that he's planning to be here in the year 2100, and says that when he is, he will be looking back on the choices we made right now to see if we acted in time to create a climate that he and his future kids and grandkids could thrive in, they can't wait for us to act to lead the world on doing something about climate change before it is too late. This is our chance, and we have to do it together. And it all starts by creating a different kind of politics, one where the American experience is defined not by exclusion but by belonging. Look around you. We are creating the community right now to show, not just tell, what America might look like if we had the powers of the presidency in the right hands. This is our chance. These are the things that we can do with our American presidency. In other words, as I come here one more time to look you in the eye and ask you for your vote, the reason I'm doing it, the reason I decided to run for this office, is not that I got it into my head one day that I would like to occupy it. It's that this office has a purpose, and the purpose of the presidency is not the glorification of the president. It is the unification and the empowerment of the American people to do these big things. That's why I'm asking for your support. So if you're ready for that understanding of the presidency, if you're ready for a politics that calls everybody in, or if you're just ready to turn on the news, look at your president, and feel your blood pressure go down a little bit instead of up through the roof, this campaign is for you. So one thing we believe in is dialogue. Our numbers have grown just a little bit since we started out a year ago with a campaign team of 4 people in an office about as big as this stage I'm on. But I figure, although I've never done it with this many thousands of people, I figure there's no such thing as an audience so big we can't have some form of dialogue. So we gathered up questions. We got them in our famous fishbowl. And I'd like you to welcome to the stage Brenda, one of our best supporters, who's going to be your voice and guide this conversation. Come on up. I know I'm biased, but don't we have the best, kindest organizers, volunteers, and team members on this campaign?
What an amazing crowd. So I am, as Pete mentioned, a volunteer, and I'm delighted to be your voice this afternoon. So many of you submitted questions. I'll just start with this first one. What's been your most surreal moment of the last year? And this is from Suzanne.
All right. If it's your question, give a holler. I'll try to look in your direction. Oh, there you go. See? Oh, that worked out pretty well. Everything about this is surreal. Look, a year and a half ago, I was an elected official, but I was also driving my Chevy to work every day. And when you wake up and you're trying to remember what state you're in, or you're trying to make sure you have your briefing in the back of your head on the latest foreign policy just before you go on morning news, and then Lizzo walks by, you're in a room with Lizzo, you can't pay attention to anything after that. The whole thing is unreal. But the most remarkable thing in this kind of out-of-body experience is that you're in the whole country all at once. And what you find out is that the different states and communities in this country are very different, but what people are looking for is pretty much the same. People are looking for a better life and a better politics. They want to actually feel like politics is speaking to them, like the decisions that are made, especially in Washington, D.C., are done in a way that connects back to our everyday lives. And as unreal as all of this is, it brings me right back down to earth, because it turns out that politics is just people, and this is the most human process I've ever been part of. Thanks for being part of this.
Your next question, wow, especially in Arlington, really resonates. How will your administration address housing discrimination and ensure access to safe, decent housing for low-income and other vulnerable populations? And this one is from Kellen McBath.
All right. So this is so important. I see you, more or less. And this is one of those questions I'm hearing everywhere I go. The president says that the economy is fantastic because the Dow Jones is looking good, right? There is not one county in the entire United States of America right now where somebody working full-time can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. It is just one example of what we have got to change when it comes to access to housing. First of all, we got to make sure people get more income in the first place, which is why we got to raise the minimum wage, empower organized labor, make it possible for gig workers and domestic workers and farm workers to organize. But then we got to deal with the cost side. And it's not going to get better without a real investment. That means hundreds of billions of dollars that will be well worth it to ensure that there's no longer wait lists for housing choice vouchers for families with children, and to increase by 2 million the number of affordable housing units being built here in the United States of America. And then you mentioned housing discrimination. This is so important because it continues to happen. The value of a home in an identical neighborhood is $40,000 lower if that neighborhood is majority African American. That is going on right now. Black home ownership is at the lowest level it's been at since the Fair Housing Act was passed. That's not going to get better until we put as much intention into dismantling the effect of systemic racism on housing as went into it in the first place. That means affirmatively enforcing fair housing rules. It means, in my view, a 21st century Homestead Act so that families that got redlined into neighborhoods only to face being gentrified right back out of them when the prices go up, have a chance to build equity and build generational wealth right where they grew up. This can be a matter of life and death. Black lives are at stake not only in reforming how policing works in the United States, but also housing. Because every family deserves to be able to live in a safe neighborhood. Every family deserves to be able to live in a neighborhood free of contamination from environmental pollution, which we know disproportionately happens to Black and Latino and Native homeowners and houses. We have to act with every bit of the intention that got us to this point to get us to a better point. And when I am president, we will have a Department of Housing and Urban Development that is actually committed to making sure that every American has access to that housing, regardless of their background.
Mayor Pete, how are you going to empower youth activism? And this is from a 17-year-old named Ellie.
All right. Oh, you're right here. So like I said, you don't even have to be old enough to vote to have an impact. And youth activism is part of what is changing how the world works right now. Look, the longer you're planning to be here, the more you have at stake in those decisions that are about to be made. And I think it's really revealing, for example, that Times Person of the Year, if she were a U.S. citizen, would not even be old enough to vote. But the climate activism of Greta Thunberg is helping change the conversation. Same thing on gun violence. When students march for their lives, it is changing things in a way that no politician could. And here's the really good news. This isn't the 60s where a young generation took to the streets to protest against their parents. Right now, what I'm seeing is young people marching for their lives when it comes to gun violence, demanding we do better on climate change, and I'm seeing their parents and their grandparents at their side cheering them on. That's what we saw at the Women's March. That is so powerful. I know you don't yet have the power of a vote, although you're about to. But you have another kind of power, which is when you look in the eyes of anybody who is old enough to vote, anybody who holds authority, and you raise these questions, like, what are you doing to keep me safe? A voice rises up in the heart of any thinking person, which says, do not let this young person down. The power of that voice can do as much to change our politics as anything that any one person running for office can. And as president, I will be counting on youth activism to push our country forward and make sure these changes actually happen. It's very
The next question is from Terry. We need a president who believes in science. How will you support medical research for cures?
Remember when you could just assume that the president would believe in science? I'm sorry that this has become a politically controversial idea, but yes, the president and the administration should believe in science. And should believe the recommendations of scientists. and should make sure that people running agencies are committed to their mission. For example, someone in charge of environmental protection who believes in climate science. And as Terry's question suggests, a lot of this means making sure that we are funding basic research. This is part of how growth and development happens. Maybe only a company could invent the iPhone, but only federal research could invent the internet. The same thing is true in the medical space. I'm delighted to see people take basic research and run with it to create cures, but it's not all going to happen for profit. We've got to fund the research that advances humanity and advances our ability to find cures for what literally ails us as an American people and as a human species. And America will restore its leadership role in the sciences under my administration. And we're going to need to call a lot of scientists into service to help us get that done. And I bet there's some folks right here, right now, who would be willing to be part of that mission.
This has been really inspiring. I'm told that we have time for just one last question. I know. How are you going to give hope to a generation of the hymnless? This is from a spiritual LGBTQ plus person, Justin.
Generation of the hymnless. All right, very good.
Hymnless.
So we draw hope from different sources. Some draw hope from faith. Some draw hope from family. I think we can all draw hope from right around us. I'll tell you where mine comes from. People ascribe it to youth, but it's actually from experience. I think about the hope that my city represents. Our city was typical of the so-called Rust Belt. A decade ago, they said we were dying because all the factories closed and so many people had moved out. And as mayor, I was able to guide that city and join with neighbors as we picked ourselves up, defied what the press was saying about us, welcomed new residents into our community, formed a different future, and are now growing for the first time in a long time. If there's a temptation to give up hope in our capacity for unity as a country, I think about it in terms of the experience I had overseas, deployed with people completely different from me. I mean, really different politically, as well as regionally and racially, but you know what? We trusted each other with our lives because we had to. Somebody was getting into my vehicle in Afghanistan. They didn't care if I was going home to a boyfriend or a girlfriend. They didn't care if I was a Democrat or a Republican. We trusted each other with our lives because we had to. And having seen that happen, I believe you don't have to go to war in order to have that experience. It's part of why I believe in national service, creating 1 million voluntary paid national service opportunities a year. And yes, I also draw a lot of my own hope from the LGBTQ experience. Look, we got a long way to go when it comes to equality. There's no question of that. And when I am president, we will. Beginning with the Equality Act and continuing with an end to the war on trans Americans and affirmatively building up everybody's sense of belonging in this country. We do have a long way to go, but part of why I am hopeful is the fact that I'm standing in front of you as somebody who was raised at a moment when you thought you could either serve or you could be gay. You definitely could not be both of those things. You could either be out or you could be involved in public service and politics, where I came from. Not both. You could either be married, or you could be gay. Not both. And I'm standing right in front of you, as a veteran, happily married, running for president of the United States. That's what I get my heart. Let's do one more. Let's add one more.
So the last question, and just I happened to pull two, so this is the last one. How was meeting Ellen? And this is from Rachel.
Good question, Rachel.
Ellen is the best.
You know, we need a little more of that. We need a little more kindness in this world. I understand that there are times when we've got no choice but to fight. and I'm ready for the fight of our lives in order to make sure that we make Donald Trump a one-term president. I think we're all ready for that.
And again, this is where I view things
a little differently than Senator Sanders. I don't believe we can allow ourselves to get to the point where it starts to feel like fighting is the point. Or it gets to where like fighting's all we got. The point is not the fight. The point is what lies on the other side of the fight. And what I see there is that experience of belonging in our country that we can build together, that we can only build together, that we cannot build by beating each other over the head. Anyway, those are some of the things that go through my mind when I had the wonderful opportunity to spend time with Ellen. All right, now our time really is up. One more big thank you to Brenda for being your voice. And I want to ask you to soak up the sense of belonging that we are creating right here.
Politics will be fierce sometimes, but it is not just combat. It can be about building community.
It can be about lifting each other up. That's why I'm in this in the first place. And so the biggest thing that I'm asking of you, besides of course your vote, is to find people in your life who maybe did give into that temptation to walk away from it all because it's so exhausting, because it's so crushing sometimes. And to draw them back in the name of whatever hope propelled you into this space, whatever hope made you think it was worth standing in a line a mile long just so we could spend some time together talking about the future of this country. I know why hope as a word went out of style for a little bit in American politics, because of the bleakness and the division of the moment we're in. But I would also argue you are here because some sense of hope tells you that our lives could be better depending on the decisions they make in those big white buildings over the river and whose hands are on the pulleys and levers of American government. It's why I'm here. There is a reason why. Have you ever noticed on the news they took the word hopeful and they turned it into a noun and they use it as another word for candidates? I'm a 2020 hopeful. That's what I'm doing here. How fitting. Because running for office is an act of hope. And so is helping somebody run, so is volunteering, so is voting. You are spreading that sense of hope that it does in fact matter who gets their hands on those pulleys and levers and what values guide those hands.